Okay, so let's get started with Raglan section 1. I'm just going to take you through it step by step, this entire first row, because this is the first time you're going to be working these make ones. So in the instructions, it says to knit 1, and then it tells you to make your first M1R. So that's a make one right. Make one right means that you're going to take your left needle and you're going to insert it into, see how in between these two stitches, there's this horizontal bar in between. You're actually going to be picking up that bar right here. And when it's a make one right, you're going to be picking it up, going from the back to the front, and then putting that loop right there onto the left needle. And then you're going to knit into it from the front. So you're going to take your left needle and you're going to knit into the front. And I'll tell you, this first one that you do, it's going to feel a little slippery. It gets much easier once you have more stitches on the needle. So it's okay if it feels slippery at this point. Just make sure to hold things a little bit tight. So go into the front of that stitch and knit it. See, that is a make one right. So then it says to knit 1. So we'll go ahead and knit 1. Then it says to slip the marker. So just slip it from the left needle to the right needle. Then you're going to knit 1. Now it says to M1L. So it's similar. So this is a make one left. But see this bar in between the two stitches? Instead of picking it up from the back to the front, it's the opposite. You're going to pick it up with the left needle, going from the front to the back, and then with the right needle, insert it into the back of that stitch, and then knit it. I'll just do a quick explanation as to what's going on here. So we made a make one right, one stitch in from the marker on this side, and we did a make one left, one stitch in from this side. So this is a right leaning increase and this is a left leaning increase. That's why whenever you make an increase on either side, one will go in one direction and one will go in the other direction. Okay, so moving on. Now there's an asterisk and then it says knit to one stitch before the next marker. Okay, so we're one stitch before the next marker. And then it says to do a make one right. A right is where you go from the back of the strand, put it onto the left needle, and then knit into the front of it. And then it says to knit 1, then slip marker, then knit 1, and then make one left. So that's where we go into that strand from the front to the back and then knit into the back of it. Okay, then there's a colon and then it says repeat from star 2 more times. So when it says something like that, you go back to where you see the asterisk, the star, and you're going to repeat between the asterisk and the semicolon 2 more times. So we're going to knit to one stitch before the marker again. Okay, we're one stitch before the marker. We're going to do our make one right then. So again, going from the back to the front, then knitting into the front, then knitting 1, then slipping the marker, then knitting 1, then making, doing a make one left, so going from front to back, then knitting into the back, so that we've repeated from the asterisk to the semicolon 1 time. So we're going to do it 1 more time. So knit to 1 stitch before the next marker. Now you don't have too much to go to get to 1 stitch before the marker. Okay, then we're going to do our make 1. Make sure you go through the full strand. There we go. We're going to knit 1. Then we're going to slip the marker. Then we're going to knit 1 and do our make 1 left. So go front to back, knit through the back. And then the very last instruction of row 1 is knit last stitch. So we'll just go ahead and knit that last stitch. Okay, so row 1 is complete. Now, row 2 is going to be a nice break. It's going to be your easy row. You're just going to purl all the way to the end, just slipping the markers as you reach them. We'll show you the very beginning part of what that means, slipping them as you reach them. So let's just go ahead and purl to our first marker. So it just sort of bounced right over there. You're going to slip it from the left needle to the right, just like that. So you're going to purl all the way to the end of this row. So now row 3 of Raglan section 1 is very similar to row 1, but because you have more stitches now on the needle, it just starts out a little bit differently. So right away, it starts with the asterisk where it says knit to 1 stitch before the marker, make 1 right, then we're going to knit 1, slip marker, knit 1, make 1 left, and then it says repeat that 3 more times. So we'll repeat it at this marker, and then at this marker, and then it just says knit to end. Okay, so we finished row 3. Now row 4 is the same as row 2. It's a wrong side row, so you'll turn the work and you're just going to purl to the end, slipping the markers as you reach them. Okay, so now rows 1 through 4 of Raglan section 1 are complete. It's actually starting to look a little bit like something, at least more now than it did before. Now the next step is that for all sizes, now it says to repeat rows 3 to 4 2 more times. So that row 3 again was where we were doing a make one right, knit one, slip marker, knit one, make one left, and doing that at every single marker. That was what row 3 was. And then row 4 was just the purl row. So you're going to repeat those 2 rows 2 more times. Then I provide a stitch count afterwards. So that's a way to double check to make sure that you've made all the right number of increases at the appropriate points. So one little tip I wanted to share before we go further, I'm just going to put my first page of instructions down here. Now, I've been doing a lot of make one right and make one left, so I have it already memorized in my head. But if you're not super familiar with them yet, that's probably the trickiest part of this raglan, is just remembering is make one right back to front or front to back, and vice versa. So this is what sometimes I would do if I forget. I just make a little note on whatever page that I'm working on that the make one right is pick up back to front, then knit into the front. Make one left is pick up from the front, from front to back, and then knit into the back. Just a little reminder so that when you get to that point, that might be helpful. I just always found it helpful until I had it nice and memorized in my head. Now, one thing I want to explain is that Raglan section 2, and for that matter, the Raglan section 3, 4, and 5 are all involving the same stitches that I just showed you in Raglan section 1. You're always going to be knitting on right side rows, and you'll be working these make ones. It's just the sequence of the make ones that might be different depending on the section and the row that you're on. So for example, looking ahead to Raglan section 2, row 1 is the exact same row as row 3 from section 1. So you got that down. Row 3, see how I have a note here that says neck INC? So that's neck increase. That means that for this row, there's also going to be another increase that is for the neck area. So because this is a V-neck, we also need to be increasing on each front every now and then to create that shape. So whenever you see a row that says neck increase, all that means is that there's going to be an additional increase in the beginning of the row and the end for the fronts. But it's not a different stitch. You're just working a make one left, and then you see the asterisk, it goes knit to one stitch before marker, make one right, So it's the same as the previous rows. And then you'll also see in section 2 that the number of times that you repeat rows 1 through 4 differs depending on the size that you're working on. And then certain sizes you need to repeat just rows 1 and 2 one more time before you would move on. Then you'll also see that after you get through that, depending on the size that you're working on, you might go to a different section. So just make sure to kind of read through all of that really carefully. And then the other thing I'll point out is that there are going to be some sections and some rows where you might increase at some of the markers, but not all of them. And if that's the case, it'll say something like this. So row 1, sleeve increase only. So for this particular section, which really just applies to size 1, but just to give you guys some background, that just means that you need to read this carefully and look at where these make ones are, because in this case it's going to be a little bit different than on previous sections. So really the key with the raglan sections is that you're just going to be either knitting or purling and either doing a make one right or a make one left. It's just the sequence of where those make ones are that will be different in each section and on each right side row. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to let you finish up your raglan section 1 and then move on to the rest of your raglan sections. Happy knitting!